Hey guys, I just got into town in New Orleans and I'm here for a CreditCon. Tonight is the second day. I just finished up our sessions and I'm wanting to do some sightseeing and go get some dinner. Maybe do some education. You guys want to come with me? Let's go. Hey guys, I am here in the French Quarter of New Orleans. I'm in Jackson Square, which is one of the most beautiful places in the entire world in my opinion. What I want to take a minute to talk about is Hurricane Katrina, what happened, what went wrong, and what we learned. So on August 29th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina slammed into the Gulf Coast and changed American disaster response forever. More than 1,800 people lost their lives, entire neighborhoods disappeared underwater, and families were stranded for days without water, without food, and without rescue. But Katrina wasn't just a natural disaster. It became a national lesson in emergency management, exposing both incredible acts of heroism and devastating failures at every level of response. Today we're looking at what Hurricane Katrina was, what emergency responders did well, what went terribly wrong, and the lessons we still carry nearly 2 decades later. And while you watch, I want you to think about this question. Could your city handle a disaster like Katrina today? Let me know what you think in the comments. So just a little bit about the backstory of Katrina. Hurricane Katrina began as a tropical storm over the Bahamas on August 23rd in 2005. And at first, it didn't seem unusually dangerous. But once it entered the Gulf Coast where the waters were especially warm, Katrina rapidly intensified into a Cat 5 hurricane with winds that reached nearly 175 miles per hour. Although it weakened slightly before landfall, it still struck Louisiana and Mississippi as a massive Cat 3 storm. The biggest disaster, however, wasn't only the wind, it was the flooding. New Orleans sits below sea level in many areas and relies heavily on levees and pumping systems for protection. However, during Katrina, several of these levees failed, and approximately 80% of New Orleans flooded. Entire communities were trapped, hospitals lost power, thousands gathered at the Superdome and Convention Center seeking shelter, and supplies quickly ran low. Many residents had no way to evacuate, especially the elderly, low-income families, and people without transportation. And for days, rescue operations struggled to keep up. If you were alive during Katrina, what do you remember most about seeing it? I remember seeing it on the news. 2005, I had graduated high school just the year before, so this was a pretty significant historical event. For you, though, drop your comments and your memories down below, especially if you lived through this firsthand. It's important to remember that during Katrina, many responders performed incredible acts of bravery under impossible conditions. Local firefighters, police officers, EMS crews, Coast Guard teams, National Guard members, and volunteers worked nonstop to save lives. One of the biggest success stories was the United States Coast Guard. Despite dangerous flying conditions, Coast Guard crews rescued more than 30,000 people during and after the storm. Helicopter crews landed on rooftops and pulled survivors from floodwaters and continued operations around the clock. Many responders themselves had lost homes or family members, and yet they still showed up to help others. Cajun Navy-style volunteer rescues also became famous during Katrina. Ordinary citizens used fishing boats and personal watercraft to rescue stranded residents when official resources were overwhelmed. Hospitals and medical teams improvised emergency care with limited power, supplies, and communication. Some emergency managers also successfully coordinated evacuations before landfall, which undoubtedly saved thousands of lives. Without those evacuation efforts, the death toll could have been far, far worse. Katrina showed the very best side of human courage, but unfortunately, it also exposed some major weaknesses. The failures during Katrina became one of the biggest emergency management controversies in U.S. history. First, communication systems failed. Police, fire, EMS, and government agencies often couldn't communicate with each other because radio systems were incompatible or they were damaged. This is something that we encountered during 9/11, and we didn't really learn our lessons, unfortunately. Second, there was confusion over leadership and coordination. Who was in charge, and whose plan should we follow? Local, state, and federal agencies struggled to determine who was responsible and who was responsible for what. This caused resources to be delayed, and many residents felt abandoned. One of the most criticized agencies, unfortunately, was FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Supplies and personnel were slow to arrive in some areas, and at the Superdome and Convention Center, thousands waited in harsh conditions without enough food, water, sanitation, or medical care. Another major issue was evacuation planning. Officials had evacuation orders in place, but many residents had no transportation to leave the city. This exposed a major problem in disaster planning. A plan only works if people actually have the ability to follow it. Katrina also revealed infrastructure weaknesses, especially in the levee system. Investigations later found engineering and design failures contributing to this catastrophic failure. Perhaps most importantly, Katrina exposed social inequalities. The people most affected were often the most vulnerable: low-income residents, elderly individuals, hospital patients, and those without resources to evacuate quickly. And that sparked difficult national conversations about preparedness, poverty, and government responsibilities during disasters. What do you think was the biggest failure during Katrina? Was it communication, leadership, infrastructure, or evacuation planning? I'd really like to hear your opinion in the comments. We did learn a lot from Hurricane Katrina. Katrina permanently changed emergency management in the United States. After Katrina, agencies invested heavily in better communication systems, improved evacuation planning, stronger coordination between agencies, and updated flood protection systems, and more organized disaster response structures. New Orleans rebuilt and strengthened its levee system significantly. FEMA also restructured many of its disaster response procedures. Emergency managers today focus much more on incident command systems, multi-agency coordination, resource staging, public warning systems, and planning for vulnerable populations. Katrina also taught responders the importance of flexibility. No disaster plan survives perfectly once chaos begins. Responders must be able to adapt quickly when infrastructure collapses. Another huge lesson was the importance of community preparedness. Government agencies alone cannot handle every disaster immediately. Prepared communities with emergency kits, evacuation plans, communication strategies, and neighborhood support recover faster. And finally, Katrina reminded us that disasters are not just about weather. They're about people, how we protect them, how we communicate, and whether we're truly prepared for the crisis. Hurricane Katrina remains one of the deadliest and most important disasters in modern American history. It revealed extraordinary heroism, it exposed painful failures, and it changed emergency management forever. But the real question is, have we learned enough to prevent another disaster like Katrina from unfolding the exact same way? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want more content about emergency management, disaster response, and lessons from major historical events, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.